Have you ever had a problem so super duper annoying that you wanted to just smash it with a sledgehammer? Well, the problem all gun owners have right now is the ATF's crazy pistol brace rule, and the sledgehammer we just got a hold of is the lawsuit that's gonna crush it. Welcome back, I'm Jon Patton, and the fight for gun rights continues. What have we just pee-pee slapped the ATF with? Let's introduce our fighters. In the red corner, we have FRAC, SB Tactical, B&T USA, Richard Cicero, and the attorneys general from a huge chunk of U.S. states. And in the blue corner, we have U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, the Department of Justice, and the absolutely abhorred ATF. Now, when it comes to lawsuits against the federal government, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So I want to make it very clear that this is not the only lawsuit fighting back. There have been a few so far, and we are still waiting on more to be released. So while it certainly wasn't the first lawsuit to come out against a pistol brace rule, this is definitely one of the strongest. The core arguments being made in the suit are what makes it so strong. There are 3 core arguments with a bunch of stuff supporting them. I'll do my best to condense this. It's a lawsuit, so it's full of legalese and lawyer speak, so I'm gonna try to simplify this. By the way, there's no sponsor on this video, so help me out and get subscribed and leave a like on the video, leave a comment. It legitimately does help. First, and obviously one of the most asinine things about the pistol brace rule is that the rule exceeds ATF's statutory authority. What that means in simpler terms is that the ATF is trying to shove pistols with stabilizing braces into the NFA where they are not currently regulated.
You weren't supposed to do that.
And as such, the ATF would be amending a long-standing law. In fact, the NFA specifically excludes pistols and revolvers with a rifled bore. The next supporting fact presented towards argument 1 is that ATF does not have the power to redefine the term rifle, as they are attempting to do with this new rule. This section also presents some clear info about ATF misinterpreting, in my opinion intentionally, the terms designed and intended when they tossed aside the fact that the brace is designed and intended to be used on the forearm of the shooter. They also land a jab in here about a line in the final rule that points out that only 63 firearms with braces have been traced in criminal investigations, and that in 2021 alone, ATF traced over 375,000 pistols without braces. This points out very clearly that ATF is chasing a political agenda rather than something actually being used in crimes. They also point out that ATF concedes in the final rule that a braced pistol is more accurate and therefore less dangerous than an unbraced pistol. This sort of goes against the idea that long guns that have been chopped down are inaccurate and therefore more dangerous, which was a key point of why the NFA was created to begin with. This section also points out that the brace rule violates something called the rule of lenity. What that generally means is that if a statute is ambiguous and it has criminal penalties, the government loses. It's way more complicated than that, but I'm not a lawyer. Argument 2 is based on the factors, the factoring criteria part of the rule, and says they are unlawful because they are completely arbitrary. This section goes on to dunk on the ATF for the nonsense they're using to regulate braces. If you aren't up to speed on these things, it's rear surface area, weight and length, length of pull, necessity of function, and the most absurd, the marketing and community information surrounding the braces. One of my favorite lines in that section is a quote from a judge in a suppressor case where ATF lost. Bud Light is not a single malt scotch just because it's frequently served in a glass container, contains alcohol, and is available for purchase at a tavern. Get bent. This section also digs into the cost-benefit analysis that ATF put out being completely arbitrary. It says that ATF left out the number of braces sold in 20, 21, and 22, and as ATF suggested, brace production didn't take off until 2017, they're missing a huge chunk of data. The suit even notes that SB Tactical sold 2.3 million braces from 2020 to the date of publication of the rule. Like I said in my first video about this nonsense, the ATF's reported number of braces is 3 million. Being that SB Tactical sold 2.3 million since 2020 alone, and they're definitely not the only game in town, that 3 million number is way the heck off, just way off. This omission of those numbers alone would throw their cost-benefit analysis out the window, making the whole thing, say it with me now, arbitrary. Good job, kids. To further support this claim of the rule being arbitrary and capricious, this lawsuit states that the rule is impermissibly retroactive, pointing out that the Gun Control Act, which created the ATF, does not give them the power to create retroactive regulations. The third pillar of this sledgehammer of a lawsuit states that the adjudications are unlawful and confirm the rule is arbitrary. It's kind of the word of the day. This is focused on the rule going against the APA, or Administrative Procedures Act. It basically states that the ATF is out of line by adopting a new rule, then immediately applying that new rule without allowing regulated parties, that's us, to present evidence on why they should not be held liable. The way that applies to this situation is that when ATF came to the public for comment, they were using a points-based worksheet for classification, and then flipped things around and came out with something that we had no chance to comment on at all when the final rule was published, and that suddenly was judging things based on the totality of the circumstances. The suit also digs into ATF for not thoroughly explaining why certain guns in the rule were considered SBRs beyond presenting an image of them with little to no explanation. It's just a picture and it says this is an SBR. And with little to no explanation, the rule can't reasonably be applied and therefore needs to be ejected out of existence. Beyond that, it goes into the ATF specifically issuing decisions about the SB mini brace twice, and now suddenly they have gone the opposite way and saying this makes it an SBR magically. That reinforces the fact that the rule is arbitrary and cannot be upheld. The amount of times that this legal team in the lawsuit kicked ATF directly in the nuts is fantastic.
So I kicked him square in the nuts.
If this case wins, I'm saying this publicly, if this case wins, I will personally buy the entire legal team a bunch of Smoke Wagon bourbon to celebrate, because this is great. Now, the fact that ATF published this nonsense and thought they would get away with it is pretty shocking to me. You know, the more I think about it, it's almost as if the ATF has been completely weaponized against gun owners in a political mission against freedom. In the great words of Joe Biden,
all men and women created by you know the thing. You know how we talk about it. Are we the people? Folks.
You know, the thing.